You've entered dead orbit, a channel where space isn't empty, it's haunted. We explore lost transmissions, forbidden missions, and truths NASA bury deep in static. If you're hearing this, you're already part of it. Subscribe, before the signal cuts out. You know the conspiracy. The one everyone smirks at. The moon landing was faked. Staged in some Hollywood studio. Shadows all wrong, flags waving in the vacuum. You've heard it 100 times. You laugh. Or maybe you nod knowingly. Maybe you believe it. And you'd be right, sort of. Yes, the footage was staged. Yes, the broadcast was a fabrication. But not because we didn't land on the moon. We did. We just didn't want anyone to see what really happened. In 1992, I joined NASA as a systems technician. Fresh-faced. Ambitious. I thought I'd be working with satellites or data relays. What I got instead was silence. Uneasy, buzzing silence that filled the halls. You'd feel it when you passed the locked archives. You'd feel it when you asked about Apollo. I was being processed through onboarding when I first heard her name. Dr. Penny Bradshaw. Astrophysicist. Retired. Brilliant, they said, but strange. Quiet. Some called her unwell. I met her by chance in a dim corridor outside an archival lab. You're new, she said. They haven't told you yet. Told me what? I asked. That the moon lies, she whispered. I laughed awkwardly. She didn't. They'll tell you Apollo 11 was the first, she continued. Armstrong. Aldrin. Collins. But that wasn't the real mission. That was the story for the world. I thought it was some hazing ritual. New employees get tested, right? But she leaned closer. You ever hear of Aldo 11? I hadn't. Nobody had. That's the point. She explained. 2 missions ran in parallel. Apollo 11, the public one. And Aldo 11, the one that landed first. Eau Claire and Smithson. 2 astronauts, never listed. Never honored. They were the real first men on the moon. And they brought back something that was never supposed to return. You're lying, I told her then, even though her voice hadn't trembled once. She shrugged. Believe what you want. But the real footage wasn't broadcast because no one could stomach it. Not even NASA. I walked away, brushing it off. But I didn't forget. Weeks passed. I dove into my work, logging data, reviewing signal integrity, compiling archives. Until I noticed something strange. The original Apollo files, footage, telemetry, transmissions, had duplicates. Labeled differently. Flagged internally without metadata. One of them said simply, "Do not open." Level red. Guess what I did? I asked around. No one knew. Or no one wanted to say. Until I ran into Dr. Bradshaw again in the employee lounge. She was sitting alone, sipping from a cup of tea, staring out the window. Still looking? She asked without turning. You said Aldo 11 brought something back. What did they find? She closed her eyes. It wasn't what they brought back. It was what they saw. What did they see? She turned to me, and for the first time, her hands shook. They saw themselves, she whispered. But it wasn't them. It was something else, wearing their faces. I didn't know what that meant. Not then. But the words lodged in me. Deep. One night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those flagged files. One in particular. Labeled 01_prism footage. No timestamp. No format code. Just that. So I did what I wasn't supposed to do. I called Frank. Frank Perez was IT at NASA, but more importantly, Frank was the guy if you needed backdoor access to the things you were never supposed to see. He hated the bureaucracy. The secrets. But he loved cracking them open. Late shift? He joked when I entered the lab. Yeah, I said. Frank, I need to see the file. His smile faded. You mean the prism? My throat went dry. He knew. He always did. You've seen it? I asked. Frank leaned back in his creaking desk chair, the fluorescent light above flickering like it always did after midnight. Once, he said. Never again. What was it? He sighed, fingers steepling. It's not a tape. Not really. It's a transmission. A memory. Maybe even a warning. I don't know. But it changes people. I wasn't the same after I watched it. You're not exactly selling it. I joked. Good. I'm not trying to. I pressed him. I begged. I said I needed to know the truth. That I had to understand what Bradshaw had been talking about. Finally, reluctantly, Frank stood and gestured for me to follow. Down 2 hallways. Through a locked door. Into a cold room lit only by the glow of monitors. He typed in a few credentials and opened a hidden file directory. There it was. 01_tape. He hovered the cursor over it. One last chance to walk away, Daniel, he said. I didn't walk away. He clicked. The screen flickered. Static buzzed. Then a grainy image appeared. A metallic ladder descending from a lunar module. The voice of a man crackled through the speaker. This is Commander Auclair. Status, surface contact achieved. The image panned down. A boot touched the dusty gray soil. Then another. Smithson followed behind. This is Smithson. Second man on the moon. Visibility clear. Radiation nominal. I watched as they bounded across the surface, low-gravity leaps carrying them in slow motion. The module behind them gleamed in the sunlight, except they weren't near the famous Sea of Tranquility. They were somewhere darker. The terrain looked twisted. Scarred. Then I heard it. A tone. Low. Hollow. Like a pulse buried beneath silence. Both astronauts stopped. Do you hear that? Smithson asked. Auclair nodded slowly. It's coming from the ridge. The camera turned. And there it was. A shadow in the rock. A cave. The cave's entrance was almost too perfect, an arched mouth carved into the base of a jagged ridge. Not a crack in the rock, but a shape. Intentional. Mission Control, Auclair said, his voice uneasy. We're approaching an unknown structure. Requesting clearance to proceed. Static. Then a voice replied. Negative. You are to maintain survey parameters. Do not enter. Auclair looked at Smithson. Copy that, he said. Then muted his feed. What are you doing? Smithson asked. I'm not going home without seeing what's in there, Auclair replied. He turned to the camera. We're entering the cave. Suit lights on. And they moved into the dark. The footage dimmed. Their helmet lights cast thin beams ahead of them, catching glimpses of smooth stone walls that didn't match lunar geology. What kind of rock is this? Smithson asked. Auclair didn't answer. They floated forward, deeper into the tunnel. Their footsteps vanished into silence. And then, without warning, the cave opened into a vast chamber. My breath caught. The walls were seamless. Smooth. Metallic, almost, but not human. And at the center, a structure. A black triangular prism. Floating inches off the ground. Pulsing gently with a faint blue glow, as if breathing. This is it, Smithson whispered. It's the source of the signal. Auclair approached slowly. Mission Control, do you read? We have visual contact with an artifact. Repeat, we have. Static swallowed his words. The transmission was breaking down. Beside me, Frank was staring hard at the screen, unmoving. I leaned forward. Frank, is this where it happened? He didn't blink. It hasn't happened yet, he muttered. But it will. The camera zoomed in on the prism. Its surface shimmered. Not reflective, exactly, but reactive. It began to ripple, like water disturbed by thought. And then something inside it moved. I swear I saw a shape in there. A silhouette. No. Not a silhouette. A reflection. Of me. It was impossible. I wasn't on the moon. I wasn't in the footage. And yet, the prism showed my face. My expression. Watching myself watch it. My hands started to shake. I turned to Frank, but he hadn't moved. His eyes were glassy, his lips parted slightly, like he was seeing something else entirely. In the footage, Smithson stepped closer to the prism. His breathing became ragged over the calm. "Do you hear it?" he asked. Eau Claire looked confused. "Hear what?" "It's talking to me," Smithson said, reaching out with his gloved hand. "It's showing me things. I understand now." "Smithson," Eau Claire barked, stepping back. "We need to go. Now." But Smithson didn't move. The prism pulsed faster. Brighter. Then the video glitched. The footage distorted and jumped forward a few seconds. Suddenly, Smithson was behind Eau Claire. His arms wrapped around his commander's helmet. "No!" Eau Claire shouted. "Don't." The latch released. I turned away as the audio filled with screams. Gasping, choking. A body thrashing against the cave wall. And then silence. When I looked back, Eau Claire's body floated gently. Limply. Blood, red against the gray dust, clouded the air in a slow bloom. Smithson stared at him, unmoving. The prism pulsed behind him. Frank finally blinked, his voice hoarse. "Every time I watch it, it's different. It shows you what you fear. What you regret. It feeds off it." I couldn't respond. My throat was too dry. In the tape, the camera drifted. No longer held, it floated freely, capturing the edge of the prism. And there was something else reflected in the surface. A shape I recognized. Tall. Broad. With dark, sunken eyes. My father. But he was dead. Had been for 15 years. Still, he stood there. Staring at me through a recording from 1969. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just a coincidence. It wasn't pareidolia. That face, those black eyes, I'd seen them before, 1,000 nights in childhood nightmares. It was him. My father. But wrong. Distorted. Elongated. As if someone had tried to reconstruct him from a fading memory. In the tape, the image rippled and warped. The prism shimmered, then dimmed. Smithson stood frozen beside Eau Claire's lifeless body. He wasn't crying. He wasn't moving. He was listening. The screen crackled. Then, as if the camera had a will of its own, it rotated, slowly, deliberately, toward the prism. I didn't want to look. Frank reached over and paused the footage. "You saw him, didn't you?" he whispered. I nodded. "He was there for me too," Frank said. "Only it wasn't your father." "Who then?" "Amelia." His voice broke. "My wife. She died in a car crash. Because of me. I was driving. It should have been me." I swallowed hard. "She never spoke to me in dreams. Never visited. But in that tape she did." He stared at the screen. "Only it wasn't her." We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Frank said, "There's something about the prism. It's not just a machine. It's alive. It sees into you. It feeds on your worst moment and pulls it forward. Makes it real." "But it was a video," I said. "Just footage." Frank turned. "Was it?" He clicked play. The camera showed Smithson approaching the prism. His face was fully visible now. He was smiling. Wide, mechanical. Too wide. "I see it all," he said. "It's beautiful." Then the feed dissolved into static. But just before it cut out, one final frame. My father again. This time, smiling too. The tape ended. The room was deathly silent. The monitor's glow faded to black, and in its reflection, I saw only myself, pale, shaken, eyes too wide. I turned to Frank. He was breathing heavily, like he'd just surfaced from deep underwater. "We shouldn't have watched it again," he muttered. "It remembers us." I stood up, unsure what to say. My limbs felt weak. My head buzzed. Outside the office, the hallway light flickered, then went out entirely. A hum filled the air. Subtle, but rising. Like feedback from an old speaker, climbing toward a frequency that drilled directly into my brain. "What is that?" I asked. Frank didn't answer. He was staring past me, toward the glass panel of the lab door. I turned slowly. A silhouette stood just outside. Broad shoulders. Long arms. A face obscured in the dark, but I didn't need to see it. I felt it. The same as I had when I was 10 years old, hiding under my bed from the man who thundered through the house in drunken rage. Frank backed away. "It's starting again." The door handle turned. I grabbed Frank and yanked him out the side exit. We ran down the corridor, the buzz intensifying, lights above us bursting one by one. Behind us, footsteps echoed. Too loud. Too heavy. Not human. "This isn't real," I shouted. "It's hallucinations." "No!" Frank screamed. "This is what happens after the tape. It opens something." We ducked into a supply room, slammed the door, and braced it with a chair. Silence. Then knocking. Rhythmic. Then it spoke. "Daniel," the voice said. Too deep. Too slow. "I saw what you did." I clamped my hands over my ears. Frank was sobbing now. The door creaked. "Go away," I whispered. "You're not him." But the voice just laughed. A wet, horrible sound like mud being stirred. Then, nothing. Frank and I stayed frozen in that room for what felt like an hour. Time lost all meaning. Either of us spoke. We just listened, to silence, to the hum still ringing in our bones. Eventually, Frank whispered, "It's gone." But neither of us truly believed it. We crept back into the hallway. The office was dark, flickering monitors casting pale light. Papers were scattered across the floor. A chair was overturned. But no sign of the thing. Whatever it had been. "It showed you your father," Frank said. "But it wasn't him. The same way Amelia wasn't my wife. It imitates grief. It builds itself from trauma." "The prism," I muttered. "That's what it does." He nodded. "That's why they buried the footage. Why they faked the moon landing. Not because we didn't go, because we did. And we brought something back. A signal. A presence. A mirror for the worst parts of ourselves." "Where is it now?" I asked. Frank looked grim. "Still on the moon. I hope." We left the building. The sky was dark and cloudless. The moon hung low and bloated above us. And I couldn't stop staring at it. Was it still out there? That cave? That chamber? That artifact? We never spoke of it again. We made a silent pact. Some things, once seen, can't be unseen. And if you talk about them, they get stronger. That's what Frank believed. A month later, he quit. Disappeared. Left no note. No forwarding address. Just gone. And I stayed. Because I had to know. What if we didn't leave the prism there? What if it came back with us? What if it was still broadcasting, still infecting minds like a virus of memory and fear? I started to notice others around NASA who wouldn't look you in the eye. Who blinked too rarely. Who seemed to pause mid-sentence, as if listening to something else entirely. Some of them had watched the tape. Some of them had seen their version of the prism. And every night since, I dreamed of the same voice whispering in my ear. We never left. The nightmares worsened. Not like dreams, not even like flashbacks. They were transmissions? That's the only word that fits. Broadcasts from somewhere else. From the cave. From the prism. Each night I'd see new angles of the chamber, visions that weren't on the tape. Sometimes I'd float above the moon, looking down as if I were tethered to some invisible eye. Sometimes I stood beside Smithson, watching Eau Claire suffocate again and again. And always I saw my father waiting in the reflection of that impossible shape. my waking life began to fracture. I'd lose time, seconds at first, then minutes. One time I looked up from my desk and the sun had shifted 4 hours. Once, I found blood beneath my fingernails and didn't know whose it was. NASA doctors called it stress. Hallucinations. But I knew better. The tape had shown me something real. And now that I'd seen it, I was part of it. One night, I returned to Frank's old lab. I needed answers. To my shock, his computer was still there. Still powered. And on the desktop, a single folder pulsed faintly. Prism_continuum. I opened it. Inside were documents, scans of handwritten notes, mission debriefs, satellite logs, and audio files. Some were corrupted. Others played low-frequency tones that made my teeth ache. But one file stood out. Labeled Smithson_log_final.wave. I clicked it. Static. Then, this is Commander Smithson. If anyone finds this, you were never meant to see it. Aldo 11 failed. The prism, it's not a machine. It's a gate. A mirror. A parasite. We thought it was alien. It's not. It's us. My skin crawled. I killed Leclerc because I saw what he'd become. What we all would become. It doesn't just show you your darkness. It brings it forward. I was still me, but I wasn't in control. And when I looked into the prism, the file cut off. Just gone. As if something had deleted it from reality itself. After that night, I tried to forget. Tried to rebuild some illusion of normalcy. But once you've glimpsed the prism, the real moon, you're never truly alone again. Every reflective surface became a threat. Computer screens, windows, even water. Sometimes I'd see something standing behind me. Watching. Familiar but wrong. I transferred to a quieter department. I kept my head down. But in the walls of NASA, the whispers never stopped. I found out there were others. A quiet network of former employees. People who had seen the tape. Each with a different vision, dead children, vanished siblings, war crimes never committed but vividly remembered. All tied together by one constant. The prism. A few believed it was a weapon. A leftover from something that came before us. Others thought it was divine punishment, a punishment hidden within the cold soil of the moon until we came digging. Me? I think it's us. Our guilt, our trauma, our darkest selves, made manifest by a relic that doesn't care whether we survive the knowing. I don't sleep much anymore. I hear a pulse in my dreams, like a heartbeat. It calls to me in numbers and shapes. The worst part? NASA's going back. They're planning new missions. Not just landings, habitats. Bases. Colonies. And if they dig deep enough, if they follow the signals buried in that dust, they'll find it. They'll find what we were never meant to see. So I'm telling you now. Not for glory. Not to go viral. I don't care if you believe me. I just want it on record. We went to the moon. We found something. And we lied to protect you. But the lie is cracking. And when the prism opens again this time, it won't just reflect us. It will become us.